Right. I do. Thank you. Thank you, and Morten, for having me today. I'll do this a little quicker than otherwise, so we can try and catch up on some of the time and have a break. My name is Morten Wittrock. I'm an SAP mentor, and I organized the Untitled Chapter event in Copenhagen along with my friend and colleague Anne, who we just met. I try to visit a lot of, as many as possible, Untitled Chapter events as well. That's a lot of fun. I have a day job as well. I work at SAP partner KMD in Denmark. I do some blogging on the SAP community site, links up here. I have a Twitter handle as well. Unlike Italy, I don't have like a cool backstory for the handle. It's pretty boring actually.
From Denmark, your story is even colder than mine.
Thanks. So, usually I do fairly technical talks, typically around SAP Cloud Platform topics. This time around, I'm doing a talk that's completely untechnical about how I wrote the book for SAP Press and what I've learned along the way. This is my book. It's part of the e-bites series at SAP Press. So under normal circumstances, it's digital only. We do have a few print copies, and as Oliver mentioned, you can win a book today, later today. The topic of the book is Cloud Connector. I'm not really going to be talking about that. I'll give you a very, very brief introduction. It's a tool that lets you access your on-premise resources like web services and other function modules from SAP Cloud Platform. So you can have an SAP system on-premise with a lot of old data services exposed through SAP Gateway. You can call those services from an SAP UI5 application, for instance, running on SAP Cloud Platform. And that's about it for Cloud Connector today. If it's something. And at the beginning of the project, this was about the sum total of my knowledge of the book publishing process. You have an idea, something, you have a finished published book. I know slightly more by now, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. First off, I'd like to give you an idea of the process and the timeline involved. It took about half a year from step one to until the book was published. I got in touch with SAP Press in April of last year, pitching this idea for this book. It was fairly short, this pitch, just my thoughts around why do I think this book is necessary, and some thoughts on what the content would be. SAP Press got back to me, saying we're interested in looking into this, so they assigned an acquisitions editor, Harim Shafi, to work with me on fleshing out the content of this book. So for the next about 5 weeks, we did that work, so exploring what's going to be in the book, who's the audience and so on, and also specifically working on the table of contents for the book, and some estimates on the number of pages and so on. At the end of these 5 weeks, the editor pitched this proposal to the editorial board at SAP Press. That's a group of people that decide on whether to go ahead with a book project or not. Luckily, they gave us the thumbs up on last day of May. So that's where the actual writing started. I got an author kit from SAP Press containing templates, guidelines on how to use them, guidelines on language, how to create diagrams, screenshots, etc. And the first actual delivery to SAP Press is the sample chapter. Not necessarily the first chapter, just any chapter of the book of a reasonable size that you can finish within around 3 weeks. the purpose of which is for SAP Press to decide or to actually have a look at, am I using the template correctly? Are there language issues, etc., that we need to sort out? A couple of days later, after handing in the sample chapter, I got some really nice feedback from SAP Press. And that's where the real nose to the grindstone kind of work started. So for the next 3 months, I wrote the entirety of the rest of the book. And I handed in the finished manuscript in September 22nd. And that's where the production people at SAP Press take over. So the people who turn those words and screenshots and diagrams, etc., into a nice looking book that follows all the style guidelines of SAP Press, etc. I received, I think, 3 proofs during that time to read over and comment on until the book was finished and released on October 19th of last year. So round about half a year from that first contact to the book was released. A couple of notes on what constitutes a good idea for a topic to write about. Well, point 1, you need to know something about this topic. I know it's pointing out the obvious here, but on the other hand, you don't need to be, the #1 expert in the world on Cloud Connector. I'm certainly not. To write a book about it, but you do need a fairly solid foundation of knowledge, because otherwise you will need to do a ton of research, and that's just adding more work to an already pretty huge task. So at least a solid foundation in this topic. Also, it needs to be something that you care about. In my case at least, and I guess the same would be the case for many of you guys, I did this work outside of office hours, so evenings, weekends, mornings, holidays, etc. So if this is something that you don't really care enough about, you're not going to be successful because you're going to hate it basically. You'll be spending all your spare time, and it's a ton of work, so you need to care about this topic. And thirdly, it needs to be something that the publisher is interested in. And, well, they care about making sure that there's a market for this book. There are people out there who are interested enough in the topic to actually put down their hard-earned money. And also that you're the right person to actually write this book. There's a page on, if this is something you're considering pursuing, there's a page on SAP Press that goes into more detail about how to get started as an author with SAP Press. You'll get the slides afterwards, and the link is in here. These are the tools that I use for writing the book. Microsoft Word was a given in the sense that the SAP Press templates are Microsoft Word templates. Not my tool of choice, but that was a given from the get-go. I used Bitbucket, the Git repository, to store versions of the book while I was writing it. Could be any repository, GitHub for instance, but Bitbucket offers free private repositories that are not open to the outside world, so that helps in this context. And I used an old-fashioned fountain pen to write a ton of notes, and I'll get back to that. In order to give you an idea of the scale of this of the project, I brought some random numbers. The word count of the book is slightly under 24,000 words. That's slightly more than 147,000 characters. I actually checked the average length of my blog posts on the SAP community site, and the book in its entirety is the equivalent of about 51 blog posts. And at the rate that I'm posting, which is not that often, it represents slightly more than 3 years of blogging. in a period of 4 months. So it's fairly compressed work. 102 figures in the book, so diagrams and screenshots. 134 pages, which actually puts it among the longest of the e-bikes, usually shorter than that. And 169 commits to Git along the way, so every time I made a significant amount of work, I would commit a new version to Git. Okay, so what did I learn while writing this book? Again, sort of probably pointing out the obvious, but it's a lot of work. That doesn't mean that I expected it to be just very easy, but I assumed it would be a lot of work, and it was that and then some. So keep that in mind, factor that in, if this is something you're considering doing, especially if you're going to do this in your spare time, weekends, etc. There's a ton of work in it. Something that worked well for me was to keep a list of mundane, easy to do tasks. Something like, okay, this screenshot on page something needs to be updated because in the latest version it looks slightly different. Because even though this is non-fiction, it's a technical book, you still need inspiration. You still need, ideally, to be in a zone to do some good writing. And sometimes you just aren't. If you're sat at the computer at 9 p.m. and you just did the dishes and it's been a long day at work, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of brilliant writing. But I had a stack of notes of those tasks, and at least I could spend half an hour doing some of that stuff and still make some progress on the book, even though I wasn't actually writing a lot of new text. So that worked really well. Also, that example points to the next bullet actually. A lot of stuff, especially when it comes to cloud, will happen in that writing period. So just assume that things will change, new versions will come along, and you will have to update and go back to revision, and etc. So instead of being angry about it, just assume that that's the fact of a rapidly changing IT world. Stuff will change, especially if you're writing a book of several hundred pages. It will take so long that you will need to change things on the way because new versions come out, etc., especially in the cloud. Get help. I guess that's always a good idea. No matter how deep your knowledge of this topic, there will be stuff you don't know. I was lucky enough to have the help of two great guys from the Cloud Connector team at SAP, Marcus and Morten, who were very patient, very kind to answer all my many questions. So it's a really good idea to have this sort of backup for the topic that you're writing about. The next point, thinking about the book's scope. When I had finished my book, I sort of arrived at the conclusion that it should probably have been either shorter and more of an introductory text, or longer and more of a reference type book. And instead it sits pretty much right in the middle of those two because it has a lot more content than an introduction book, but there are still the stuff that's not covered, so it's not entirely reference either. So if I had had the same knowledge going into the project, I would probably have chosen one of those two, shorter, longer, but not in the middle. And also spending that time initially in the first period of the project on writing out the table of contents. That was that really paid off because it structured the whole effort. so that there was never really a time where I was just looking at a blank screen with a blinking cursor, having to come up with something, because I always knew where to go next, since I had the whole table of contents already written. And in fact, I think the contents of the final book is actually remarkably close to the one we came up with in those first weeks of the project. So it really worked to put that effort into doing it initially. All right, that was the slightly speeded up version of the presentation. Do you have any questions? Do we have time for questions, Oliver?
Sure.
Okay.
I have two.
So because the title was How to Write the Book, do you have second presentation How to Sell the Book?
Exactly. That's what SAP PRESS does. So they take on a lot of the marketing tasks. You can contribute to that yourself, of course, social media and so on. But that's mainly their part of the equation. And I don't know anything about sales.
Can you disclose how much your share of the end price is to get back? Or just background, it might be more interesting to self-publish the thing, right?
Sure. I think, Anna helped me out here, I think the number is 12.5%, around those lines. No?
Isn't it less? I mean, you're using this. This is a spare time project for you. So the gift is having given a book, I suppose. But we can find the numbers if you really want the numbers.
It's like organizing an inside track.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 10 to 12%, something like that, of the revenue. But really, overall, financially, it doesn't make sense at all.
I was just wondering, because a colleague of mine also wrote a book and he said, in the end, I would have probably been better off if I was self-publishing.
Financially, I don't know. You'll definitely get a bigger cut, for sure. But I think generally speaking, with the amount of time you need to put into the project, what you're getting back in terms of money doesn't make sense, I think. So that doesn't really work as a motivation, for sure.
So and I wouldn't underestimate as well editors who are checking your book, because I read books self-published.
Man, sorry, this is my turn. I was before you in line.
I didn't see it.
And you said something already.
Sure.
What I want to know is you were hinting that you wrote that table of contents first, and I was wondering, did you use an outliner?
No. Just Microsoft Word and discussions with the editor.
Yeah, but did you use it like an outliner? I mean, it's kind of clumsy, but you can if you force it a little bit.
No, not really.
So I like the technique for writing.
No, we didn't. No, not at all. But it might make sense, definitely.
Just a moment.
Last question.
Sure.
Last question before the break.
Thanks, Oliver. Did your blogging style change after writing this book? Did you go at writing blogs now differently, more structured or something like that?
That's a good question, and I think it did actually. It's easier at least to structure it. So now that you mention it, I think it did, and writing, especially longer blogs, definitely become easier.
Utmost respect for writing books. It's like exposing yourself to the outside, and takes quite some, I guess, to do this. Whenever I write a blog, I feel like, oh god, I'm going to be screwed over, everyone is hating me, and stuff like this. So writing a book is probably even a bigger thing because it's more time investment. Sorry, break, bye.
Thank you. Benefits nobody can comment on a book. Difficult for the negative feedback. Good. Thank you, Morten.
Thank you.